What's good, guys? This is tcgsam here, and in today's video I've got a feature match between me on my brand Shaddoll pile deck against Tearlaments to see which is the better fusion strategy. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy this video. If you haven't checked out the deck profile, it's already up on my channel, so be sure to do so you have a better idea of the cards that we're playing. But with that being said, let's just hop straight into it. So we're going to lose the Darrow, and our opponent's going to start things off with the Wraith Soth grabbing Fenrir, then special summoning the Fenrir to grab a copy of Tearlaments Kashtira, which is just really great in the deck, gives it mills, and Fenrir is a great interruption. He ends up hitting a Medora as well as a Sulliek, which is pretty good for him. Sulliek lets him grab a Sheeran from his deck to his hand and get Medora in the grave. Discarding Kelbeck next with the Sheeran to mill 5 both of our decks, as well as the 3 from Sheeran itself. So he's going to hit a Scream and grab a Sulliek, and then hit 5 from both of our decks. He hits a Kelbeck, Hedgehog, and a Trick Clown on our side, and he hits a couple of Shaddolls on his side, hits a Havness on his side as well. So I decided not to trigger the callback, mainly because I think his mills are honestly a lot better than mine, so I hold off from doing so. And I also want to keep the resources in my deck if possible. I end up not using the Trick Clown because it's just going to lose out to the Fenrir right after. So I'm just going to grab the Search Off Hedgehog. Our opponent's going to use the Havness to fusion summon into a copy of the Mud Dragon of the Swamp, giving him a fusion body for fusion plays, or giving him a level 4 body for a rank 4 like Dime Thief Redoer. So next up, our opponent's going to decide what he wants to do here, and he's in a pretty interesting spot since especially now that he has talents, he's seen my hand, he can make all of his plays based on what he sees here. So you see our hand was interesting. It was a good mix of like monsters and a couple of fusion starters like El Shaddoll Fusion and Patchwork, and I think our opponent ends up choosing the Patchwork to put back into our deck, but we have Edgem Chain to be able to search it out again later anyway, so it's not a big deal. He's going to overlay for the Redoer next and set the copy of Sulliek and pass things over to us. To start things off with Redoer, taking a spell unfortunately for us, which just nothing we can really do about that. Our deck is mostly spells, so he's just going to be able to take out so much from our deck. I'm going to start things off with the El Shaddoll Fusion, and I probably should have done this like during draw phase to maybe make it so he's not inclined to Redoer. I end up fusing the Medora I just drew, and that's going to help me get rid of his Medora as well as the monsters that he's going to use for the Sheeran fusion that he just detached off of the Redoer. So that Medora draw is pretty good for us because now our Shekanaga is actually putting in a decent amount of work to be able to beat over cards on his board. We're gonna send the dragon. Dragon's gonna attempt to pop the Sulliek from the effect being from our Squamata. His Sulliek's gonna let him search, but that's fine because we just wanted to force it out at the moment, so we're actually able to keep making our fusion plays. And then from here, thinking about what we want to do, how we're gonna push through his board and actually establish one of our own, because the rest of our hand is just a Shaddoll, a Edgem Chain, and a copy of Sheeran. So I'm just going to go battle phase, beat over the Fenrir so I don't have to deal with it. Activating the Sheeran next, discarding the copy of Edgem Chain. We're going to end up milling Shaddoll Schism as well as 1D, which is pretty solid. Not only that, the Chain also lets us grab a copy of for Patchwork from our deck to our hand, which is one of our best fusion outlets. I'm also going to summon the Beast from my deck in face down defense position from the Wendy's effect. And then from here, fire off the Patchwork right away to grab a copy of Polymerization as well as Edgem Chain. And then from here, I have a couple of different options. I have Polymerization right away to fuse into a card like Dragostapelia using my copy of Shekanaga and Sheeran, and that's going to trigger Sheeran as well to fusion summon for an additional Shaddoll body by putting the 2 back and making a copy of Winda. I grab back the Schism with a copy of Shekanaga effect and pass things over to our opponent, feeling pretty good about how the turn went overall. During the end phase, your opponent's going to grab back the Redoer, and then during the standby phase, he's going to be able to take something from us again. It's not a big deal that he has it because we do have Schism to send a dark monster he controls either through like summoning Winda or summoning another Affliliate, so it doesn't particularly matter. I end up deciding against using Dragostapelia on the Redoer here. I just felt like with one trap in the deck, it just really wasn't going to come up. Our opponent does get the draw though from Redoer, which is pretty unfortunate for us. Has happened 2 turns in a row, but we do get Brandon High Spirits into rotation. Opponent's going to start things off with a Kaiju over our Winda. Winda's going to let us grab back a El Shaddoll Fusion from our grave to our hand for some follow-up. And then from here, I'm not too worried still, because once again, we do have the Shaddoll Schism. I'm going to chain the Schism to Keldo, but unfortunately, our opponent has the one of Heartbeat to actually get rid of it, discarding the Sharon, and there's just not much we could have really done to play around that, I think. I guess I could have added back El Shaddoll Fusion instead of the Schism, so I'd be able to set up a window that way. But even then, if I did that, I'd just end up losing the Redoer, beating over the window regardless. So not much I could have really done there. Our opponent just had the perfect card to out it, unfortunately for us. He's going to trigger the Agido to mill more from his deck, as well as use the Sharon. Summon his own copy of Draco Stapelia, so now mine is pretty much useless. All I have milled on my side is a copy of Squamata and a copy of Hedgehog. And a copy of Triclon as well, I guess, which just really doesn't feel that great, all things considered. We just end up adding the dragon to our hand and sending a copy of Shaddoll Incarnation to the graveyard for some flip-flop plays, maybe later this turn. But pretty much the ball's in our opponent's court. I don't really have much I can do on my side of the board, considering I don't have hand traps, and my Draco Stapelia is sort of turned off by his. When he's going to summon out the Tearlaments Cashier, he's going to get some additional mills and just mill the last two tier names he didn't use. So nothing really much we can do here. His mills are just significantly better than ours. That's sort of like the big thing about the Shaddolls. While the Ishizus can be like decent, and in general your mills are going to be better than your opponents, like against Tearlaments, like yeah, their mills are just always going to be better than yours, and there's not much you can really do about that. So he's going to summon out Rukalos here and then summon out the Kaleido Heart. So he's just going to build his full board of fusion bodies on the board, and there isn't really too much that we can actually do other than try to survive this turn, given how much damage is on the board at the moment. I'm going to end up using the Shaddoll Incarnation to flip my Draco Stapelia face down just to dodge his Kaleido Heart Shuffle effect, just so we have an extra defender on the board, and I figured that would be better than actually dying, so I decided to do that and hope for the best. So now our opponent's thinking about if he actually has a way to game us, because there is quite a few bodies on his side of the board. In fact, he has a full board, and even if he doesn't set up anything, he's still gonna have a decent amount of disruption with just Rukalos and Stapelia alone. But he's gonna go battle phase, clear out everything. I'm gonna use Beast Effect to draw 2, discard 1. I don't remember what I ended up drawing, but I think I end up discarding a copy of the extra Brandon High Spirits. And then since I'm going to add it back during the end phase anyways, I think it was a bit of a mistake because I've kind of forgot he had Keldo on board. He can just Keldo away the Brandon High Spirits before I get to use his effect. So a slight misplay on my part. I should have thought about that a little more. But anyways, he's going to go main phase 2 to link the 2 off into a copy of IP Masquerena. And then end phase, I'm going to add Brandon High Spirits from my deck to my hand. Starting with Brandon High Spirits, it's going to let me send a Shaddoll from my hand to the graveyard and then add a Blazing Cartesia. So I do apologize for the proxy that you're about to see. It is just a copy of Blazing Cartesia. I'm going to use the effect of the dragon to pop his copy of Scream just so he doesn't get additional mills later on. And then he unfortunately takes a spell for the 3rd time, just gets an extra draw. And that one Redoer just put in so much work, just drew 3 cards for him. But like I said, not much we can really do about it. Considering most of our deck has spells. Our opponent's going to, I believe, end up negating this Rukalos. You kind of have to, otherwise I threaten a card like just getting 2 Shaddoll effects as well as like Applone or something, and he does end up Rukalos negating it and sending the copy of Tearlaments Kashtira to mill additional 2 cards, which doesn't hit anything. I'm going to end up normal summoning the Blazing Cartesia, and then from there, I believe I'm going to attempt to enter battle phase to force out the copy of IP Masquerena. Before doing that, he makes a sprint though with the Masquerena and the Redoer, sending them early, just getting another fusion effect, and this is just a lot of tempo that's really difficult for us to keep up with. Being able to put back the Beast as well as the Merle, summoning out his own copy of Winda now. And then from here, it's actually an interesting position because we actually have an out to the window in the Grand Goyle in our graveyard because he did use the Merle effective fusion summon. We're going to be able to banish the Grand Goyle to actually summon a Dogmatica monster directly from our deck, which is probably not something that most people expect. We just summon out Fleur-de-Lis because it's big. It just becomes 3k, so even with the Primeval Planet on the board, I'm still able to beat over the copy of Winda and then just hopefully be able to continue playing from there. Unfortunately, can't beat over the sprint because of the planet on the board right now, giving his monsters attack, but we did deal with the biggest threat in El Shaddoll Winda. So next up, I'm going to use the Maximus here to banish the Stapelia and summon it out from my graveyard. Activating the Maximus effect next to be able to send Apclone as well as Entis, and I'm thinking really hard about what I want to destroy here. I really want to get rid of that Root Callus, but I just know if I end up destroying it, it's just going to come back, so not much I can really do about that. So I just end up destroying the Stapelia. Apclone's going to add a Schism from our deck to our hand, because I recognize the only way I think I'm winning this game is through the grind game that Schism can offer by sending a monster and fusing during every turn. So I just end up doing that, setting the Schism, and leaving myself with a Blazing Cartesia on the board, which unfortunately isn't really doing anything at the moment. Because we don't really have anything to fuse into after we go into Maximus. So I just keep it on the board for our opponent's next main phase. He's going to use the Shuffler to shuffle back some of his resources and then end up drawing a card for his turn. And then from there, he is going to start things off with King of the Swamp to be able to add Polymerization from his deck to his hand. And this is kind of dangerous for us because as long as he's threatening Chimera, he's threatening our back row with Schism. And Schism, like I said, is pretty much the rest of our grind game, considering we went through so much of our Shaddoll names. I think, in fact, we went through all the Shaddoll names in our deck. And so from there, he's going to use Chain the Habness to my effect of the Blazing Cartesia to summon out a copy of Construct. Construct effect is going to let me send any Shaddoll card from our deck to grave. Just sending a Shaddoll fusion just to thin out the deck a little bit. Like I said, we already ran out of Shaddolls to actually use. So now with our opponent's grind game with the tiers being able to put back fusions during every turn, it's just going to be really difficult for us to actually keep up with this. I said that multiple times during this match, but I remember when playing this match, I just felt like no matter how much of a comeback I could have made, it's just impossible to keep up with like the grind game that Tearlaments have once their deck becomes like super thin. And then from here, I just end up conceding because this Chimera is going to pop my entire board, and we do unfortunately lose game 1. So moving on now into game 2. Alright, so getting into game 2, we do get to go first this time, kicking things off with a copy of Nadir Servant to send the Apclone from our extra deck to the grave and add a copy of Dogmatic Ecclesia. I'm going to add Hedgehog to my hand and then discard it to search a copy of Squamata. And then from there, I'm just going to end up normal summoning the Ecclesia to be able to add a Dogmatic card from our deck to our hand. I believe I end up just going for Fleur because at this point, I think my hand was like no Shaddoll monsters or something, and I didn't have a Shaddoll spell engraved to be able to get full value off Maximus anyway, so I just end up setting 3 cards, passing things over to our opponent. He's going to end up going straight into the battle phase, threatening the copy of Evenly Matched. I'm going to chain the Brandon High Spirits to send Grand Goyle and search the copy of Blazing Cartesia, banishing everything except for 1. I believe it was a copy of All Shaddoll Fusion, which I kept. I'm going to use the Squamata next to special. Send Wendy. Wendy's in a special Shaddoll face down, and he had a second evenly matched, and I was just like, okay, fine. I'm just going to use the Cartesia as well as the Beast to fuse for the copy of Construct. I'm going to use Construct's effect now to dump any Shaddoll card from our deck to the graveyard, as well as getting Beast effect to draw 1. I'm just going to send a Shaddoll fusion from our deck to the grave, and then from there, things are back in our opponent's court right now. Like you may have seen in the deck profile, we don't have any hand traps. We rely a lot on our back row and our monsters to form that core of disruption. So when our opponent just normal summons Medora, I'm feeling pretty decent about it. Honestly, if he has to normal summon Medora, I imagine his hand probably isn't that good. Shuffle back our Blazing Cartesia, our Shaddoll Beast, as well as the Shaddoll Fusion just to get rid of a few more of our resources, set a card, and pass things over to us. I kick things off with the Patchwork, which should not be played in that column, by the way, but it's not going to end up mattering. I end up using Sharon to get rid of the chain to mill extra copies of Beast and such, and our opponent just packs things up from there because he knows we have game on the board. So we do end up taking down a very swift game 2. Our opponent's hand wasn't that great, and even though we got double even lead, we were still able to take back the game during the next turn. So now we're going to move on to game 3. So starting game 3 off, our opponent's going to start with the copy of King of the Swamp, adding Polymerization from his deck to his hand, then using Terraforming next to be able to add a Pride Planet from his deck to his hand, and that planet's going to let him add a Fenrir, which is then going to be special to add a copy of Kirikashiro. He's going to normal summon the copy of Diviner, and Diviner's going to send Nagito to mill 5 cards from both sides of our deck. And you can just see here, like even though he technically doesn't hit like that insane, just the fact that he gets the Heartbeat to add back the crime is already huge. That's an extra interruption we have to deal with. I choose to end up summoning the Trick Clown this time, just hoping he forgets the Fenrir, and he actually does, which I guess works out. But in the end, He's still going to be able to grab out Rukalos with his Shiren Fusion, using the King, the Swamp, and the Shiren, activating the Primeval Planet next on top of his planet to grab Shiren back to his hand, and activating Shiren to get rid of Tear Kashtira and milling 3 cards. He's going to hit another Soliek and a copy, and use the Tear Kashtira to mill 2. He's going to hit Beast and Squamata, so just getting extra draw off Beast. But the important thing is, like, at this point, he has the materials for a Baronne de Fleur because the Diviner's level 6. He's going to set Soliek as well as Crime, and this is just a almost impossible board for any deck to break, much less like our deck, which doesn't really have access to those going second cards. We know we're going to have to deal with at least 2 Omni negations with Baronne and the counter trap. We have a summoning negation like Rukalos, which is essentially an Omni negation against us. We have to deal with Fenrir, we have to deal with Planet, and we have to deal with Soliek. So just a lot of stuff for us to actually deal with, and I was thinking really hard at this point, but I think in the end, I just decided to go for it and recognize the only way I win is if somehow my opponent doesn't end up negating my fusion spells. So he's going to end up negating it, of course. I'm going to activate Polymerization next. 100% has to negate that. Otherwise, I summon out Guardian Chimera, and that can just sort of break through part of his board and gives me a chance, but he's definitely just going to have to stop that with either the Baron or the copy of the Crime. He's going to use Baron to stop it. I'm going to use Foolish Burial next to send a copy of Beast, hoping to draw into maybe a card like Sleeper Polymerization to give me a chance. I don't end up drawing it, and from there I just concede the game. So if you guys enjoyed this content, let me know by leaving a like, commenting, and subscribing. But with that being said, I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.